Yeah, clearing his throat in the background is the Attorney General of the state, J.B. McCuskey, formerly the auditor of the state. Good morning, J.B.
Hey, good morning, guys. What do I have to do also?
Well, you've already done two. You're auditor and Attorney General.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm good. I mean, I can pick up trash or shovel snow or whatever. Just let me know.
What is the blue collar jobs of your background growing up, JB? Putting yourself through school, maybe getting some extra cash in high school, whatever. What other jobs have you done?
Well, I did a lot of lawn mowing. I did a lot of shoveling, but mostly, my dad was doing campaigns and stuff. I worked for my dad, and so I sort of drove him around the state for a couple years, just being his sort of political assistant. I remember I actually crashed my car the summer of my 16th birthday, right after I turned 16, and my dad made me pay the deductible, and so he just didn't pay me for the whole summer. And back then, I think deductibles were like $500, and I went back and calculated it. I think I made like 45 cents an hour. I should have probably called the child welfare services or something.
Well, you left yourself open when you said you did a lot of shoveling, but we all were kind enough to let that one go.
Well, I did most of the shoveling in the auditor's office. That was there was a lot of shoveling to do for the first few years of that.
Did you have a lot of investigations still open when you left the office, JB, or did you close those to have a fresh slate for the new
Oh, no,
auditor?
we had an enormous amount of them. I'd say we probably had somewhere between 50 and 75. I didn't look at the exact number right before I left, but there were a number of open investigations and several fairly large cases that will hopefully come to conclusion here in the next couple months.
Do some of those also mix territory between the auditor's office and the attorney general's office?
They really don't. Well, one of them kind of does, but the attorney general's office has very, very limited criminal powers, which is fine. And the auditor's office, by virtue of it being the chief inspector, has pretty significant criminal and investigatory powers. Our investigatory powers in the AG's office are very vast, but they are much more related to civil actions, right? Things of how are nefarious companies trying to take advantage of West Virginia consumers, et cetera. So we have access and the ability to subpoena those kinds of records with a broad swath, but pretty minimal other than the Medicaid fraud unit of any criminal or investigatory power.
I want to talk to you about the Purdue Pharma settlement. There's been a few of these, I remember, over the last few years, and they were restructured in the court or held up in the court. JB, do I have that correct in regards to Purdue Pharma and the Sacklers?
Here's what happened, right, is these guys created a drug that, in fairness, has a solid limited purpose, right? An end-of-life drug that was good at managing pain for those who were who didn't have a very long time to live, or were in the kind of pain that was intractable. And they coerced the FDA into telling people that this drug was safe for everyday use and wasn't addictive. And once they figured out that this drug was going to make them a ton of money, they just completely lost their minds and essentially said to the people of Appalachia that we don't care about you and we're going to use you as a way to become billionaires. And then, everybody figured it out. We've all seen the documentaries. It was a disaster for the last 25 years. West Virginians have been struggling through this horrible opioid crisis. And when it became time to pay the piper for all of the evil that they've done, they didn't fess up and say they're sorry. A family of billionaires declared a fake bankruptcy and claimed they didn't have any money. And so even at the very end, till the very last moment, they tried everything they could do to ensure that the people of West Virginia were never compensated for the damage that they caused. And the end of this case was the end of their bankruptcy and the disillusionment of both their company and their assets. What's really remarkable is that all of the members of the Sackler family are still multi-billionaires, and one of the siblings was fighting till the very end to never pay us a dime. And so if you thought they were evil by flooding our state with this dangerous drug, their evil hadn't really shown its head yet, because by the end of it, not only had they harmed us, but they were trying to prevent us from finding their assets in order to find a level of retribution against them, and or some justice, I guess, would be a good way to say it. And we're happy that we found some justice. We all know that the amount of damage they caused pales in comparison to what they paid, but we're excited about the settlement.
$7.4 billion. What portion of that comes to West Virginia?
Roughly $55 million, and all of this started under General, now Governor Morrissey. But we were able to negotiate a much shorter payment time frame, so we will be paid the $55 million over a much shorter time frame than the other states that were part of the settlement.
And is that the 15-year time frame?
No, ours is 9. So almost all the other states are in the 15-year range, and we're going to be paid out in less than 10, which is great because, as we all know, the time value of money, getting it in your own pocket is really, really meaningful. Does
this money go into the West Virginia First Foundation, or is that totally separate from this settlement?
No, it will be distributed by the same ratios as all of the other opioid funding. So some of it will end up at the county, some of it will end up in the foundation. Counties and cities, I should say. Excuse me.
Very good. Thank you. Admiral.
Let's go to John first, and then I have some questions later.
Hey, Admiral.
Good morning, JB.
I think this is the first time that the Admiral's interviewed the General. and for the record, you're not allowed to call me the General. It feels a little bit. It feels a little strange to be a non-military person. Everybody in my office wanders around and calls me Mr. General. I'm like, hey, my name's JB. JB works just fine.
Yeah, but you deserve the title, JB. So we'll call you the General.
I deserve a title. I'm not sure General's the exact one, but yes, I appreciate that, Admiral.
Yeah.
So I want to actually not going to discuss what I think Bill thought I was going to discuss, but the with Elon Musk and the Doge operation discovering hundreds of billions of dollars apparently in Medicaid fraud, how does that affect our state and your job?
It affects it greatly. So there's a lot of consternation, which I'm not quite sure I understand, from the Democrats across the country, but notably the leading Democrats in Washington, over an effort by one of our nation's leading geniuses to try to find efficiencies in government. I remember a time not that long ago when making the government smaller and making it more efficient and reducing taxes was a non-political, universally acceptable idea. And now apparently, USAID is the most important agency in the history of America. And if we don't spend billions of dollars, figuring out how to deworm chickens in Haiti, somehow or another our country is going to fail. And, I think what he's doing is fantastic. I think, spending 8 years in the auditor's office, we promoted transparency. And what our main mission was to give taxpayers the information they need about how their government was spending their money so that they could reform their government. And Elon and Doge talks about radical transparency all the time, with the idea that the federal government is the worst offender of growing because they are able to hide what they do from the public at large. And I think at the end of this thing, what you're going to find is that they're going to recommit themselves to being transparent like West Virginia is, and we're more than happy to help show them how to do it. We made West Virginia the most transparent state in the entire country, and the technology is available. And I think the results in many respects speak for themselves. So if they're able to find, the $300, $400, $500 billion in just waste. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the reports last week, but we have hundreds of millions of dollars of software subscriptions the federal government does that no one's ever used. I mean, things like Politico, and I'm not saying any of these things are bad, but why wouldn't we want to find that? And it's really maddening for me to watch the liberals in Washington sort of push back against what I think is a really important effort to resize our federal government and recommit it to being an effective taxpayer-centered thing that delivers real results on the issues that taxpayers want. I think that's a great idea.
But to bring it to West Virginia, which is a fairly Medicaid-dependent state, that's probably a bad way to put it.
I would say fairly is not a strong enough adjective.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So there's a lot of fear when you have Doge that is getting involved, sort of knuckles deep into investigating Medicaid and changing stuff. Is there a concern for the residents of West Virginia that they're going to lose stuff? It's going to be a problem for us.
Yeah, in my experience, when you investigate fraud, the only people that are afraid of it are people that are committing it.
JB, there's a lot of definition as well. What someone considers to be waste and inefficiency, someone else views it to be critical to what they're trying to do. Going back to USAID, you mentioned deworming chickens in Haiti. Probably some validity to that. I'm not familiar with it. There's also components of USAID, such as the HIV, and AIDS vaccination, the worldwide polio vaccination. The refugee
they do a
camps,
lot of great work.
Yeah, but so everything's been painted in the same brush now. How do we differentiate what is valid or what is not, and is going to be strictly in the eyes of the beholder?
Yes. The answer to that question is yes. Fraud, one man's fraud is another man's livelihood. And that's why we have elections. We, as a country, elected a new president. We elected a Republican Senate, a Republican House, and the definitions of those things are determined at the ballot box by the ideas of the politicians that you are electing. And so in 4 years, if people don't like the way that this president and this Congress have defined those terms, they'll have an opportunity to elect a new group of people. My gut tells me they're not going to want to, but that is the beauty of our system, is that we had a person who ran on doing this. The American people elected that person, I think in large part because they promised to do this, and then they'll have an opportunity to defend their implementation of those ideas at the next election. And I think that is the beauty of our system, is that you're always 4 years away from being able to hold accountable the people that you just elected.
No, and 2 for the midterms, by the way. Just don't skip over those.
2 for the midterms. That's right. I forgot about Congress. My bad, guys.
Okay, fair enough, JB. That's a valid.
And that's okay, because Congress has forgot about Congress too. Go ahead,
that's right. But there's there's a flip argument. Is there been damage done that's going to be hard to